Hello and welcome to Failure Analysis. My name is Kevin Jordan, and we're back again tonight to talk about itemization in MMOs. Thanks for joining us. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of WoW itemization, and I'm going to try to illustrate a few points, some failings that I think we've made over the years, and once again try to point out a couple things I believe to be true. One is that players can be their own worst enemies when it comes to game design, right? So frequently players will give you feedback about various elements of the game, but if game designers take that at face value, it can lead to a place where the game is less fun. There was recently a video on YouTube about players optimizing the fun out of video games. And I think even without having watching the video, I need to watch it, but I can see a lot of truth in that, because left to their own devices, players will ask for things that are not in their best interests a lot of times. The other thing is democratic design is a recipe for disaster, right? So again, just reinforcing that idea that if you just implement what players say they want, ultimately I think your game will get worse. There has to be a translation between what players are asking for and what's good for the game, and actually a fun experience, right? And lastly, because high profile, high performing, top end players are typically very vocal and gather a lot of support because people love watching them succeed and be awesome. When they talk about the things they want, they don't always want what's best for the game. They want what's best for themselves and their experience. And so that is it can be the enemy of good game design. But frequently hiring, when teams hire game designers, they sometimes hire from that group, and it can be kind of disastrous. And I'll try to explain why that is as well. But so first, let's talk about vanilla WoW, right, and the itemization. So in general terms, we won't even talk about like the variability of like some things were just attribute sticks and other things had procs and wild effects and clickables and all kinds of crazy stuff. They were taking a ton of risks, and some of the items were off the charts powerful, and some were best in slot for well above their levels, and some items were absolute trash, right? There was a really textured experience, which a lot of people think was the heyday of itemization. And there's a lot of good stuff that came from a lot of really positive, fun experiences that came from classic itemization that we've kind of lost over the years. So we'll just talk about attributes and the complexity of attributes when it comes to itemization design, and some of the failings I think we've made over the years in the MMO design space. So first, let's just talk about strength. Plus strength. Let's assume you're a strength class. You've got a curve, looks like this, basically. This is strength. So this is a pretty linear thing. You get more strength, you get more attack power, you do more damage, right? It's really easy to graph. This is what happens. And it's really stable, really linear, and there are no surprises here. Get more strength, you can be the dependable, consistent DPS guy. Also, here's my screen. So anyway, this is plus strength, right? As you add more strength, you add more DPS. It's pretty consistent. It's pretty linear. It's got good value at the low end. It's got good value at the high end, right? Well designed, right? Okay, then you have something like, let's say armor pen. I actually don't want this curve to look like this, so let me delete this line because I need a little bit more texture in the definition. I kind of want strength to look like this. So here's plus strength. Okay, then you have armor pen. Armor pen looks more like this, right? These are supposed to be straight lines. Get over it. I'm not an artist. So this is armor pen, right? Oh, I should put a pen, not AP. So this is a pen. It has very low values at the beginning, but then eventually, at the high end, becomes considerably more important than strength in terms of its damage potential, especially against low armor targets. Then there's hit. So hit looks like this. Very powerful, and then just hits a wall, right? I apologize for the atrociousness of this. But so this is plus hit, right? As an example, and I'm sure these aren't relatively correct, but you understand the point I'm trying to, or hopefully you'll understand the point I'm trying to make here. So these are three different approaches to the attributes and things you could chase. And then there was crit and what else do we have? Just like in melee, there was very little haste, no crit damage. I think that was it. So let's just work with these three. These are the basics, right? Okay, so over time, people figured out, right, that some of these things were more valuable than other things. Attack power, right? So as an extension of strength, we'll consider that the same. So people figured out at different times on the curve, depending on where you are, these things had different value. But generally speaking, this is where it mattered, right? This is what people cared about because this was sort of the hardest part of the game, right? Like you could sort of just, as a very efficient, very good player, you could sleepwalk your way through the challenges at this level. But this is the part that really tested you. And so you figured out that once you got enough hit, then just go all armor pen, and you're way better off than you are getting strength. And so then what happened was, over time, as we went into later expansions, even the beginning of Dire Maul, we started optimizing gear. We started realizing we were hearing from this community that was basically saying armor pen is too good, strength isn't good enough, hit is really good to a point, right? And so the game designers took that as, well, we need more things like strength, right? And because of the way math works, right, the intent was to give you fun things to weigh, right? But math being math, at the end of the day, there are going to be points like this, right? There are going to be points like this and points like this. And that was deemed a bad thing in itemization design. So what we started doing was we started removing the problem categories, a pen, hit, and tried to do more things like strength. So then we have, because this became the goal, right? We got strength, we got crit, we got, what do you want to call it, mastery, we got versatility, right? So we started removing the elements that were kind of wild and crazy, and the goal became, let's try to make every attribute the same curve, the same function mathematically as we can, right? So two things about this. One is that this isn't actually a terrible endpoint, because what this creates is a situation where no choice matters, right? Every choice you make is the same, right? And that takes all the fun out of the process of defining or deciding, what is good, right? So for all the mathletes out there that are like, oh, I really enjoy figuring out this math puzzle, right? So I can determine based on where I am on this chart how to optimize my character, right? This end goal is a terrible idea from a game design perspective for that guy who wants to play that game. The other failing of this design is this isn't actually achievable. There's way too many variables in WoW, right, to accommodate for classes, class abilities, talents, racial abilities, procs, content that you're doing, the bosses, the boss mechanics. Like, there's just way too many variables for this to ever actually be accomplished in real life. And so what happens is you've created complex, right? Strength and crit are pretty straightforward, but you've created these complex attributes that are trying to do this, but all they've really done is sort of confuse players and get it to the point where they have to feed it through the back computer to figure out what is actually the best. You have to run the sims on it, right, to figure out what is the best approach for all my particular variables, right? So it's made this whole process of determining what's really fun and limited the number of people / computers that can actually calculate this kind of stuff. So this is not only a bad endpoint to reach for, but it's also not actually achievable. And along the way, all you've done is you've upped the complexity, and you've actually lost a fun experience. So let's go back to the fun experience that's had during this process, right? So this is the group that communicates, right? Because let's just say these are the people that either don't care or are meta slaves and just listen to this group, right? And so all of their thoughts mirror this group's, right? But this group here, this group that's playing at this level and has figured out the value of these things at this level, have already gone through the process, and for them it was fun to go through this process to figure out, when I was just starting out, I really wanted a lot of strength and no APEN, and then later on I wanted APEN more. And so it changed the value. Understanding this changed the value throughout this process of an APEN piece dropping, right? So they got to experience a fun and dynamic process that was a gameplay experience for them, because they're the big thinkers, the mathletes that are doing all this kind of stuff. And so when a strength piece dropped at low levels, they were excited. And when an APEN piece dropped at low levels, or low difficulty, they were bummed, right? And then that shifted over time, when they were about equal at one point, and then eventually they got more excited about the APEN and the strength. And because of their understanding, that was a changing, dynamic, emotional experience where they were having fun. Plus hit, same thing. Slightly different though, because plus hit, always great. Really excited to get those pieces to a point. Once they reach that point, then plus hit is no longer fun, but they keep those pieces, because when the next piece comes in that has to replace one of their older pieces, then they have to do that juggling of their paper doll, which is like, well, now I'm getting a lot of other stuff from this other slot where I was getting hit. I have to find a different place to supplement that hit. also a fun experience, because that's what itemization is typically all about, right? Is trying to find the perfect combinations of the things you want and managing all the slots to give you the right amounts of all the things you want. And so, again, a fun part of the process that's very much lost in, this kind of experience, right? And so, at the end of the day, changing this to this, you lost a lot of the fun experience, right? There's also just the elements of, and we talked about this a little bit in the meta-slavery video, which is how often is the new information that comes in about the new meta and the optimum way to play wrong, or replaced shortly after with a new concept that somebody else has found. So it can be an ongoing process that changes, and it certainly changes as the context of the encounters change. So when you're fighting new bosses that have new things, these values can change, the variables can change, and that there can be a new meta. And again, that process is fun. And so the meta is very rarely solved forever, right? And so that's the other thing to keep in mind when you have a system where a lot of people can participate, is that you have more people coming up with experimental, creative ideas that are challenging these notions. But in a system like this, it's too complex for people to really get their hands on. More and more, they have to just trust the computers, right? They have to trust their sims to tell them the right thing to do, and you get less creativity, less experimentation, and ultimately the whole environment is less interesting and fun. What was the other point I wanted to make? And just also, like, not everyone plays at this level, right? So what's true at this level is not true at this level, right?
Not our money.
It is now. Go and pack.
Hello YouTube. My metrics say 85 of you watching aren't subscribed to the channel. This is big sad. Like and subscribe now or your pet rock sleeps for good tonight.
Oh, he's threatening your pet rock. He's going to sleep with the fishes. Thank you very much for the donation. I really appreciate it. $5. And well said. Yeah, if you guys like the content, please gently tap that like button. Yeah, don't smash it. You don't have to destroy it. Just gently. It's very sensitive, so just a light touch. That's all we're asking for. A feather touch. So what might be true at this level is not necessarily true at this level. So the fact that things change because all the curves aren't the same is actually really healthy for the game, because people at this level can have a different sort of fun than the people at this level. And if the meta slaves in here are trying to behave like this, they're going to struggle, right? And someone's going to have to explain to them that their meta is different, right? So it's actually good to have these variable elements. And so I liked these attributes, and I think they were good for the game. And they did a lot of work in terms of giving a fun experience to play. As opposed to what many people think is the goal. Like a lot of players believe this is the goal, but it shouldn't be. It can't be because of the number of variables, and it shouldn't be the goal because this removes the very fun that you're after, which is trying to figure out how to make the best builds, how to figure out what's a good item and what's a bad item. And again, the joy of that experience of learning and growing and becoming a master of the game, right, is lost in this environment. So for those of you that just wanted a fun little history of WoW, there it is. For those of you that might be making an MMO at the moment, let's say like Ashes of Creation, wink, some things to consider. when it comes to itemization. Yeah, just a little more info on what I think game designers should be thinking about when there's a bigger picture here than what the players might believe. So thank you very much for the Twitch Prime, Darasami. So that's it for me. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Tell me if I'm way off and you love a game that's more known than experimental, or what your experiences were if you played from classic, to later in the expansions, because this all started much earlier than just retail. So this stuff like this was starting to happen as early as Dire Maul. We started optimizing gear so that more pieces were, like, they were all kind of pushed to being more optimal, which meant the difference between a good item and a bad item got much more narrow. And I think ultimately that was bad for the game. So anyway, let me know what you think, and I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, please like and subscribe, ring that bell, and it'll tell you when I got another video up. But thanks for listening, and take care. See you next time.